I'm Turk Strongman and Thuranki Ramacharaka. Thank you for selecting this video on Hinduism and Buddhism compared. Before I continue, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, do me a favor, please. Do it now. While at it, activate the notification bell feature regarding new uploads on this channel. Comment courteously below. Give this video a thumb up, perhaps now, lest ye forget to do it later. Hinduism and Buddhism compared. All emanations of the Absolute are held in the infinite mind, the infinite spirit in them, and they in the infinite spirit. The universal mind is something through which the universe of name and form thinks. The universe being the sum total of the emanations of the Absolute, and not the Absolute itself. The Absolute must know itself and all things, but in itself is unknowable. The mind of the universe knows every particle of knowledge of itself, of the universe. It knows the existence of the Absolute, but it cannot go beyond its own limits. The why of the infinite emanation rests with the infinite alone. In the essence of the Absolute Spirit is this final answer. The only real thing about man is the Spirit, the soul of the soul, which never changeth. This is the real self, the Atman. The rest is mere personality, which changes, and it ceases to be. The Absolute, when reflected in the individual soul, the ego surrounded by its mental principles, it is called the Spirit. The reflection is not the Absolute itself, yet the Spirit of the soul is real. While each soul contains the Absolute, there is still only one Absolute. That which is that subtle essence. In it, all that exists has its self. It is the true. It is the self, and thou art it. He or she who worships the self alone as dear, the object of her love, will never perish. What a strange fellowship this is. The God seekers in every land, lifting their voices in the most disparate ways imaginable to the God of all life. All manifestations of the one differ. Among them exist the personalities of humans, and the definitions each attribute to the all, and our, hopefully, corresponding methods of coming toward the all. There also exist as many moral ideas. Whether a religion has sprung from the experience of one individual or from the experiences of many, invariably the religion is the sum of the long lists of theories and those who reconstruct the past and arrange the future, or who do both. Their opinions are based on personal sensations. So where does one religion end and another begin? Shall we academically scrutinize their grossest of many as they manifest in name and form, or shall we see their essential oneness. We will become confused with the many. Endless literary controversy is for sluggard minds. Buddhism and Hinduism hold at their centers the falling away of appearances of difference. To understand the falling away of differences within and among these two religions, we must look at their essentials only. This will help us avoid becoming sluggish and confused. This approach is a matter of choice. What do we want to construct from these reconstructions? If we seek the truth in all, we will find it and become it. Whether we devote, expound, concentrate, or meditate, we become what we think. This comparison considers essentials only, whether they are ontological, teleological, or moral. This comparison also steps very far inside Hinduism and Buddhism to demonstrate its point. Their differences, being our gross confusions, fall away. But does this perspective beg the question? No more than any other determines its own results. Perspectives function so. The question is, are we looking from the side where the light shines, or the one where the light does not shine? The more we look to the light, the more it shines through us, and the more illumined becomes our perspective. The more illumined is our perspective, the more illumined becomes all manifestation. The illumination never changes, but Maya becomes exposed. Maya's final change is its farewell. I find more gross categories, manifestations, and arguments within Buddhism itself and Hinduism itself than between the two. And certainly the light in each is the same. Maya's exposure and farewell. I contrived my opening quotation from various Hindu texts. The expressed ideas stand up to cross-examination with other Hindu works. But what of Buddhism? Zen? 3 consecutive chapters in the world of Zen, entitled Isness, Malness, and Oneness, ring the same sound as does Be Here Now, written by Richard Alpert after his Raja and mantra training in India. Of oneness, M. Anasaki writes, the object of Zenism is to discover in the depths of our soul the entity which goes beyond all individual differences and temporary changes. This entity is known as spirit, the fundamental. It implies the same unity, the supreme unity of all existence, which permeates individuality and change. It can be found directly within ourselves. My illusory egotistical states separate me from my center, the real self, my essential identity with the all. Jnana Yoga carries the wisdom of Hinduism. Does it differ from this wisdom of Zen? The term soul has been tossed into a salad of theories concerning it. Many sincere individuals have tortured themselves over this voluptuous bonanza, this greed for views. Higher, inner, or esoteric concepts have been said to be dangerous for the minds of the many. Perhaps soul would best be left off the common menu. We have already covered ground around this abused word, but now to zero in. Dinner is served. Let's taste it. Kama manas is soul. Kama manas is the mind of desire. In Sanskrit, kama is desire, the cleaving to existence, and manas, the mind, the sentient reincarnating principle. Sentient is having conscious senses. The Hindus have outlined 7 human principles. Principles 4 through 6 are mental. Number 7 is spirit, Atman, Buddhi. The 6th is manas, or spiritual mind. But when combined with 4 and 5, kama manas is formed. The combination is personality. The spiritual principles are the 6th and the 7th. So the 6th, being the spiritual mind, has a double role, being not spirit, but spiritual, while partaking in personality. The personality desires, remember, and is mental. It is illusory and passes, but even the 6th, considered alone, is mental. It is chitta, or mind is substance. Spiritual mind links us with spirit, the soul of the soul. And being substance, it has form. Soul is, therefore, not eternal, for the eternal has no form. Emptiness alone, in Buddhist terminology, has no form, for it has no substance. Only spirit is eternal. Universal mind is spiritual mind, without kama qualifications, but still is sentient. Kama mixes spiritual mind up with personality and the craving for separate existence. And that is exactly what it gets. It goes about promoting itself in all sorts of ways, including claiming its own permanence and individuality. There we are, trapped in samsara by tanha. The word soul gets tossed into the salad, utterly confused with that which it is not. So much for leaking out the pearls before the swine. For the poor folk who do not understand the subtle body of wisdom, cannot savor its pearly essence. They confound it with mundane gruel, masticating the mess into pieces, and sadly, they passionately cling to the illusory slop that remains, pronouncing the steadfastness of their minds and emotions as being what's secure for them, the truth. I am a Buddhist, or I am a Hindu, for many is a generality which specifically manifests quite in terms of their own personalities and cultures. If we had wanted to look for differences among the two religions at this level, we must have begun by counting the people involved and then finding out where each stands on issues, that is, providing they have any of their own. The term soul is often used in the place of spirit, even by those who know the difference. Perhaps they want to simplify matters, sticking to the common language. Vivekananda writes, on the cover of his Jnana Yoga, each soul is potentially divine, free. But however it sounds, this does not contradict what has already been said. Potentially is the key word. Each personality makeup, of course, has divine potential. For in the appearances of Maya, in Chitta, in Kama Manas, spirit reflects. Infinite soul Excuse me. Infinite spirit is not soul. The Buddhists and the Hindus know this. The Bhagavad Gita reports that imperishable spirit is the supreme Brahman. His dwelling in each body is called Adhyatma, which we have already seen is not the same as soul. Adhibhuta is the perishable adjunct, the origin of the elements, everything having birth. Interestingly translated by Miller as inner being, Miller's inner divinity is Adadavata, the universal self in its subtle aspect, the center from which all living beings have their sense power. Subtle, according to Atma Tattva, scholar visiting Berkeley from India, is the uniting of soul, mind, personality, etc., and body. The universal self in its subtle aspect, Adidavata, is the relation of spirit to emanation. Now, upon closely examining the above discourse, I find no indication that Hinduism proposes an eternal individual soul. The details support the opening, more general statements of this paper. Soul is no more or less Maya and impermanent than any other rising, passing, and changing thing. These are the basic features of all conditioned phenomena, be they material or mental, coarse or subtle, one's own or external. All formations are impermanent or anicca. Discrepancy among views occurs only when the troublesome word soul is either used loosely or confounded with what it is not, the one often resulting from the other. The issue is clear. There exists eternal, uncreated, formless, absolute spirit. God, spirit, is self, the reality of life, jiva, body and soul. And there emanates Maya, the relative universe. Without this understanding of anatta, one will necessarily misconceive nibbana according to one's either materialistic or metaphysical leanings, either as annihilation of an ego or as an eternal state of existence into which an ego or self enters or with which it merges. Manifestation has form, which passes. The absolute has no form. Nothing eternal is annihilated, for there exists nothing eternal but the eternal, the absolute. Nothing eternal can be annihilated or merge with the eternal. Only one absolute exists. In its fullness, this understanding lies at the brink of Advaita subtlety, the further reach of spiritual mind. Using Professor Houston Smith's image of the crossing, as the raft reaches the pearly shore, all behind is Maya, not being the absolute. I believe that compassion is for all Maya existence, for those trapped by the bonanza of desires and the delusions and the sufferings. But when known for what they are, the many forms of emanation are a world of wonder. The light of the Spirit is for all. The brighter it reflects at every turn, the brighter is the world. Buddha offered a brighter way than what prevailed in his time. High truths had been expounded, then confounded, then perverted, and finally controlled. Karma yoga and bhakti yoga had become so ritualized that only the few knew its intricacies. Buddha, intolerant of the hoardings by the few of people's mental principles or souls, extracted from Hinduism those portions which offered unencumbered crossing. The confusions of the day he knew well, and he attempted to remain neutral on the issues. He knew that people understand what their levels of spiritual development allow them to understand. Explanations, being heard differently by everyone, are futile, particularly when voraciously desired. Buddha offered the way for everyone to arrive on their own at the source of truth. Of all contemporarily expounded metaphysics, he said, these things do exist, and there are those who can see them. And consequently, one would be wrong in saying they were non-existent merely because one could not see them. But also, I do not say that all that one has seen should be spoken of. If I should answer that there is a self, this would be a sliding in with those recluses and Brahmins who are eternalists. If I answer that there is not a self, this would be a sliding in with those recluses and Brahmins who are annihilationists. The way proposed by Buddha lacks the splendidly often confusing repertoire of ideas found in Hinduism. Buddha's Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, and the Three Poisons are reassemblies of essential Hindu concepts. The details of the reassemblies are demonstrable. The prolific interpretations spun from his simple teachings no doubt parallel the prolifications spun within Hinduism concerning core truths. The view from the pearly shore reveals the essential sameness of Hinduism and Buddhism, and reveals the parallel sluggard confusions existing in both. One can only let light shine forth. One's light shine forth, for within is a spark of the divine flame, which cannot be extinguished. Now I only need to tell in short what views I have about these two profound religions, simply this, that this paper results from my view on them. All that I have said coincides with truth as I have seen it through the great love of God. Before the night of Brahma, do we drop away the spiritual mind? Is final samadhi the higher Advaita, reach of subtlety only? Do we stand at the threshold of the final duality among absolute and emanation until the night? Or is final samadhi the absolute? Why does spirit emanate all manifestation? What is spirit? I have stood upon the final threshold, upon the inception of the fiery reflection. The final answers lie within the all alone. I am one now in love. But wait. I have heard it said that humans are souls who have bodies. Has this paper denied that humans are souls with bodies? Not at all. Human principles 1 through 6 are body and mind. Soul involving the 3 mind principles. These are all part of the relative universe. If the plan is to become spirit only, and as readily as possible, and if it is true that we become what we think, then is there a problem with remaining elusive on the notion of soul, as Buddha does? The answer may depend on whether or not final samadhi involves the dropping away of the final duality among emanated universal mind and absolute spirit. If universal mind exists until the night of Brahma, then mind knows eternal existence within itself. In other words, it knows itself for as long as it exists. And as long as it exists, there exists at least the upper reach of soul. Now I must bring in my own experience. In Autobiography of a Yogi, P. Yogananda writes of many phenomena as being God. I also experienced those phenomena. Electron showers, immortal flames of bliss, etc. But I also passed beyond phenomena. Yet was it I? There was, I believed, mind back there on the other side of the threshold. Mind was aware of pure spirit. I ventured to report that the final duality was traversed. While mind was aware, mind was left behind. The final answers were known. It was the final goal of all pursuit. Every speck of the relative universe was gone. Yet I was connected with mind, which is obvious, for here I am. I had been given the choice to sever that final tie which had temporarily fallen behind. Mind chose to exist. The question is, could it have been otherwise? Was there really a choice? Can this be for mind to decide? And was the final experience actually within mind, the manifested universe? Another phenomenon? Had I found God within mind, my own soul? Am I a soul floating around in God, or is the divine spark centered in me? This is indeed the divine paradox, for both are true. Although the final answers were all available, they no longer are with me, for I am again finite mind. All I remember is the part mind experienced about itself. But the relevant question is this: will I have ever at least stood upon that threshold, if not somehow crossed it, by the mercy of divine permission? If I had been either bogged down by questions of individual soul or by clinging to any particular ideas concerning it? Here I venture again. I think Buddha may have been ultimately wise by advising that these concerns be thrown together and put aside, thereby allowing for the opening of all doors. For just prior to my being spirit, only there had been the conscious decision to yield away the final hold, mind or soul itself, although those terms were far from my mind. I had approached the door many times over a period of 3 or 4 months, all following the splendor of phenomenal experiences spoken of freely in Hindu esotericism. I repeatedly faced the final moment with fear. The moment I gave up that fear of giving up the final hold, the passage completed. I made the choice to pass back through the door, for it is my destiny to tell about it. I have the duty to say that God is real and exists everywhere within everything. And there is only one God, one love. However they talk about them, the core ideas of Hinduism and Buddhism speak of the same things. So do they differ? It is a matter of what we are looking for. The differences lie in literary controversy, in the nitpicking of individual interpretations. Even those may be shown as being the same, as I have sincerely done. I can have no other honest view. In God, there is no literary controversy. God is the core of Hinduism and Buddhism. At their cores, either way we look at them, they are the same. And that core is the only true concern. Thank you for selecting this video. Hinduism and Buddhism compared. Did you like the video? Then give it a thumb up. Subscribe, get notified, comment courteously below. I'm Turk Strongman at Tharanki Ramacharaka. Go forth and multiply the depth and breadth of your understanding.